So this morning, I noticed that certain events are happening in Israel right now that appear to be game changers. Here's what I mean. I will go to Debka file first. And is it Debka file? Oh, yes. The article is Syria fire reaches the Golan for third day in a row. So Israel has already retaliated against Assad for allowing mortar fire to fall into the Golan Heights on the first day. And it happened again yesterday and now today. This by itself gives the appearance that there is a game-changing event going on in Syria. What do I mean? Well, I had talked about this, and reports coming out of Israel have said that once ISIS and the other groups fighting against Bashar Assad are eliminated, that Syria, Iran, Hezbollah would go down to the border between Israel and Syria and finish those guys off too. You see, it is one of these articles, it is written that, just to make it easy for everyone to understand, that the rebels on the southern border between Israel and Syria are acting as a buffer to a buffer between Israel and Assad's allies. And if you now I'm going to go to an article on the Jerusalem Post that was posted a couple of days ago by Seth Fransman. The title is 5 Reasons Why Nasrallah's Threat to Use Iraq and Iran Fighters Against Israel is Alarming. In a startling revelation on Friday, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said the next war with Israel could see thousands of Shiite militia fighters join forces with Hezbollah to fight Israel. This could open the way for thousands, even hundreds of thousands of fighters from all over the Arab and Islamic world, that would include Sudan, to participate from Iraq, Yemen, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, he said in a televised speech. This threat marks a major development and turning point in Hezbollah's threats against Israel. The following are 5 reasons that Hezbollah's latest statement has ramifications for Israel and the entire region. The threat confirms what security experts and commentators have predicted. In recent years, Iran has been accused of attempting to create a route to the sea via Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. This would link Tehran with its allies in Baghdad, Damascus, and Beirut. These allies include the Iraqi-based Shiite militias called the Popular Mobilizations Unit, which became an official arm of the Iraqi government in 2016. Iran is also the main backer of Syria's Bashar Assad and Hezbollah in Lebanon. It has transferred missiles and other weapons, as well as training technology, to Hezbollah. As Iran's influence grows in the region, it strengthens its relations and power in Iraq and Syria. It seems destined to control a swath of territory that would provide a physical link by land to the sea. Although Israeli and foreign experts warn about this road to the sea, few Iranians or Hezbollah officials discussed it openly. After Syrian regime soldiers reached the Iraqi border near Tanf, and the Popular Mobilization units reached the Syrian border near Sinjar earlier this month, the ability of a physical link-up came closer to being fulfilled. Number 2, Hezbollah's threats Threat builds on the model used in Syria. In Syria, a weakened regime has relied on foreign soldiers, many of them recruited by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and Hezbollah's fighters to bolster its manpower shortages in the 6-year war to defeat the rebellion. These include thousands of recruits from Shiite Hazara communities in Pakistan and Afghanistan. When Nasrallah specifically mentioned Afghanistan and Pakistan, he was referencing the recruits that helped prop up Assad. Hezbollah has suffered thousands of casualties in Syria, and it knows in any war with Israel it lacks the manpower to fight the IDF. It makes up for that with a missile threat of some 100,000 missiles. By bringing together an alliance of Shiite militias throughout the region, Hezbollah hopes to make up for its losses in the Syrian conflict and use the successful model that saved Assad to also save Hezbollah in any future war with Israel. Number 3, Nasrallah wants to drag Israel into a regional war with multiple states and provoke Russia. That's right, you heard it correctly. Provoke Russia and also the U.S. Now, Nasrallah is indicating that any war with Israel will involve front lines in Syria and Lebanon, and that it has strategic depth that it never had in Lebanon, which is a small country, by relying on Shiite militia allies from far and wide and the vastness of Syria and Iraq. Hezbollah wants to drag Israel into a large conflict spanning a crescent from Beirut to Tehran, where Israel's advantages, such as its air force and technology, will be less useful. Israel will be forced to contend with striking Hezbollah allies in Syria, Iraq, and potentially Iran and Yemen, leading to a regional conflict. Hezbollah hopes Israel will be dragged into attacking the Syrian regime that would provoke Russia. A previously acknowledged Israeli raid near Palermo was challenged by Syria's air defenses. Russian deconfliction with Israel that has worked well near the Golan would not necessarily exist for Israel if it had to deal with enemies deeper in Syria. Similarly, the U.S. would oppose any Israeli military activity confronting Shiite militias in Iraq, which are part of the Iraqi government, which is allied with the U.S. The U.S. has invested heavily in Baghdad's central government and its Prime Minister Haider Abadi. Involvement of Iraqi Shiite militias in conflict with Israel would strain relations with Washington. Number 4, Nasrallah is engaged in a war of words with Israel. Israeli politicians and generals have been in a war of words with Hezbollah in the last few months, trying to stave off a conflict. At the Herzliya conference at the Interdisciplinary Center, IAF Commander Major General Amir Ashel said on Wednesday that the Israeli Air Force could crush Hezbollah in 48 hours. He said Israel would do more damage in 48 hours than it did in 34 days of the 2006 Lebanon War. Education Minister Naftali Bennett said in March that a war with Hezbollah would involve all of Lebanon, because Hezbollah is so deeply entwined with the Lebanese state. Hezbollah has responded to these threats with threats of its own, because Israel claims it can destroy Hezbollah infrastructure in Lebanon. Nasrallah is indicating that such a war won't be so easy or going according to Israel's plans. The surprise in store for Israel, Nasrallah claims, is the up to 100,000 or more fighters will come from afar to aid Hezbollah. These numbers are likely exaggerated, since the Revolutionary Guards has only been able to recruit 30,000 fighters from Afghanistan and Pakistan to fight in Syria, and there are only 100,000 members of the popular mobilization units in Iraq. They can't all be brought to Golan to help Hezbollah, but even a small contingent of fighters coming from Iraq and Iran complicates a war with Hezbollah. Number 5, a silver lining. Will the U.S. wake up to Shiite militia threat in Iraq, and will Nasrallah's comments bring Israel closer to Saudi Arabia? The bombastic threats from Beirut mean Israel's common interests with Sunni Arab powers such as United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia are once again reinforced. Nasrallah's mention of Yemen puts Israel on the same side as these governments who are fighting Houthi rebels in Yemen, which are allied with Iran and Hezbollah. The U.S. supports the Iraqi government, which includes Shiite militias, which is close to Tehran. The statements by Nasrallah reveals the reality of the Iranian threat of a road to the sea and should encourage U.S. policymakers to see the implications of the powerful mobilization units in Iraq. This means the U.S. may finally wake up to the danger that Iranian influence in Iraq and beyond means in the post-Islamic State era that is forming. Israeli policymakers and experts who have been warning the U.S. about Iran for years may find more open ears in Washington in the wake of Nasrallah's comments. I don't know if I would agree with that, but what appears to be happening, folks, is exactly what it says in this one sentence about the post-Islamic State era that is forming. So, as I said, it appears that ISIS is finished. The Syrian rebels, they are finished. And when they are, I believe that Syria, Bashar Assad, is going to strike while the iron is hot. And mobilize all these people, his allies, to attack Israeli forces, try to take the Golan Heights back. That's going to be the idea. And then I believe, I'm not sure when this next part is going to happen, but I think that Jordan will try to take advantage with European help, with United Nations help, to take Jerusalem while Israel is at war. This is my opinion. So, in summary, I'm going to make the following statement. Israel's current arch enemies are Assad, Hezbollah, Iran, and their provider, Russia. And let me remind everyone that Sudan is allied with Iran. And another loose affiliation in its alliance is Turkey. So putting all of them together, you basically have all the nations written about in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Not limited to those. In other words, more nations could become involved and probably will. The Syrian rebels are a buffer between Israel and Israel's archenemies. What is happening here is that since Assad has finally vanquished most of the enemies in mainland Syria, he is now focusing on the Syrian rebels near the Israeli border. The Israelis believe that once Assad finishes the rebels off, that Assad will strike while the iron is hot, using the available Iranian, Hezbollah, Iraqi, and possibly Turkish and Russian allies to invade Israel through the Golan Heights. The 77s of Israel's captivity in Daniel 9 is now over. It's finished. The Jerusalem Jubilee is now finished, and it finished less than a month ago. There is great expectation that the reconciliation between our Father in heaven and all Israel, as spoken of by the prophets and reaffirmed by the apostles, is about to begin. And the scriptures are Jeremiah 31, verse 31 through 34, Hebrews 8, verses 8 through 12, and the entire chapter of Romans 11, but More accurately, Romans 11, verse 26. And I say to one, and I say to all, let the whole world see Israel's salvation.